Okay, thank you everybody for coming. It's legislation and committee of the whole, City of Utica Common Council, May 4th, 2022. We have 7 pieces in committee right now. We're going to start out with proposed ordinance number 3, which is the ordinance establishing vacant building registry. This has been sponsored by Council Member Friend. So we're going to have her take the floor a little bit, talk about it. We do have a gentleman from Albany who's willing to give us some insight on this establishing a vacant building registry. So Celeste, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Brango. So this is something that a lot of cities have done. We all know the problems of vacant buildings and how much they sort of bring down neighboring property values. They're a source of annoyance for neighbors. They're a source of ongoing problems for codes departments. And of course, in Utica, a lot of these properties exist outside of our URA boundaries. So in South Utica, just off the top of my head, when I wanted to talk about this recently, I just made the quickest drive around and could easily locate 4 houses in very nice neighborhoods that are just sitting vacant. It was very easy for me to identify 4 off the top of my head, and I think since then I could identify another 4. And these sit empty for a variety of reasons. I think sometimes it's because they come into the possession of banks, and then it's just such a pittance for a bank to continue to pay the taxes that, and it's often like a bank in the Midwest. I know that the one at the corner of Westminster and Dunham was owned by a bank in the Midwest. So I just wanted another tool in our toolkit by which we could sort of try to tackle these problems of these vacant buildings. So that's why I sponsored this legislation. It's not going to solve the problem all by itself, of course. It's just going to give us another sort of piece of leverage to get at these buildings. So, and I know that Mr. Wells in Albany has had good success with this kind of a law, and he oversees this law. And so I invited him to join us today in order for him to be able to share his experience of this working as a law in Albany. Mr. Wells, you're the neighbor. I love your title in the City of Albany, which is tell me if I'm getting it right. You're the Neighborhood Preservation Coordinator. Is that right?
Not quite. It's the Neighborhood Stabilization Coordinator.
Neighborhood Stabilization Coordinator. Okay, I was close. But I do think that that's a really nice title for a government employee to have. It sort of really gets at the thing that we're trying to do here. And of course, in South, so I live, so Mr. Wells, I live in and represent South Utica, which is one of the more sort of on the edge of the city, slightly more suburban in nature in terms of, single family homes on individual lots, that kind of thing. And there are a number of these very nice neighborhoods that have these houses just sitting vacant. And that I have to respond to constituents a lot who don't like it, and who sort of are borderline codes compliant. And so we put a lot of energy into sort of trying to deal with these properties. So my hope is that this law could provide us with just another, like I said before, another tool in our toolkit to get a little leverage against these on these owners who are just kind of holding on to them for no good reason. And it seemed to me that this is a particularly good moment to try to do this with property prices in Utica really climbing. And in fact, in South Utica, basically these days, a nice house, it's hard to get a nice house in South Utica. They sell the day that they go on the market. They often go for over asking and things like that. So that seemed like an opportune time to kind of provide another piece of leverage against these owners for them to be willing to let somebody else own their property and live in it and all that good stuff. So that's the sort of where I'm coming from in terms of bringing this legislation to the council.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wells, a couple things. We wanted our Commissioner of Codes here tonight, but he is unfortunately out of town. So we are taping this, so he's going to take a look at it when he gets back in town. Obviously, if he has any more questions, if you don't mind maybe coming back at a later date, if we had any more questions, we could set up another Skype meeting as well. Okay, I just want you to take the floor a little bit and just explain a little bit what this is all about, what other cities in New York State have this registry and how it's been working as of late. Go ahead, you have the floor, Mr. Wells.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it. My boss, our director of building regulatory compliance, may join us as his time allows this evening, and certainly in future meetings as well. So we have a vacant building registry, and for anybody who isn't familiar with that, essentially it's legislation that requires vacant building owners to register the building with the buildings department in the city of Albany. It's pretty commonplace. There's many other cities in the U.S. that have such a registry, including, I believe, cities of Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Troy, and Schenectady, closer here in the capital region, I believe, also have one. And you know, it's something that we all talk about amongst ourselves. You know, all of our fellow building department employees across municipalities in New York State all certainly, you know, chat when we have the time and opportunity with each other about this stuff. You know, we see the vacant building registry as a useful tool for us in that it helps give us a point of contact. You know, we require that not only when the owner registers the building as vacant, he or she provide their contact information. So we have a point of contact in case of an emergency. We also have a sense of where the owners are in terms of their plan for the property, or lack of a plan in some cases. And we also, when we last edited and revised the legislation, we included a requirement for an interior inspection. So as a condition of registration, you must allow buildings department, buildings and codes to inspect the interior of the property. And this isn't done, as a petty way to impose additional violations. It's really done as a service for the owner to help them identify areas that they need to pay attention to. Significant areas in electrical, plumbing, or structural issues in the building that they need to pay attention to avoid future catastrophes or future issues with the building, including things like emergency demolitions or stabilizations. We don't want to have to do those, and so we included that interior inspection as part of our legislation. It's been a great experience for us. It's another tool in our toolkit, as council member Fred was saying, and it helps us to recover some of the costs that these buildings impose upon the city of Albany. And we have our costs, so every year it comes, there's a registration fee for the owner when they register the building. It goes up every year, and it varies depending on the size and type of the building. Because say, a large warehouse, if that were to catch on fire, the city of Albany, our costs of responding to that fire would be much greater than, say, a single family, vacant home in one of our neighborhoods catching fire. The costs of responding to those things are different, so we've broken them out according to size and use. So that's the gist of the legislation of how we have it in Albany. Failure to register your building as vacant is a code violation. That is something we can prosecute in court if the owner fails to register the property. And again, it gives us another point of leverage over the owners to just ensure that they're doing the right thing with these buildings. It isn't meant to be punitive, but it certainly can be if an owner isn't cooperative and isn't putting their best foot forward with the building for the building, for the neighborhood, for the city. So that's sort of a general overview of our vacant building registry. There's obviously more fine-tuned details and information that I can provide, but sort of want to open it up for questions, I guess, at that point. If there's anything else you all would like to hear me speak on, let me know.
Okay, yeah, I do have a question. When you say vacant building now, is there a time frame for it to be deemed vacant? So sometimes they want to sell it, they can't sell it. Now it's getting worse. Over 90 days, is it 120 days? Is there a time frame where you deem it vacant and we have to start boarding it up and things of that nature? How do you enforce that?
Yeah, so our definition, we kept our definition, I believe, your legislation before you, it's the same, if I recall correctly, any building which no occupancy resides, or no tenants in lawful possession, or any building otherwise not being used for lawful occupancy. We didn't include a time frame in that because we've had issues in the past. My director, Rick LaJoy, just jumped on, maybe able to speak to this a little bit more, but we've had issues in the past with people abusing that time frame and not really being honest with us about when that started. So we generally, the moment it is vacant is when the legislation applies. Obviously we made exceptions for snowbirds, right? But those properties aren't ones we're getting called to begin with. So we're, to be frank, we're not really talking about those properties because we don't interact with them in terms of this legislation. And in terms of a vacant building registry. So we don't really include a time frame. The moment it goes vacant is the moment it needs to be registered. If the landlord's actively seeking new tenants, or if it's actively marketed, that's an exception. I believe, let's see, we have it, I can provide you with the copy of our legislation if you need it. That provides the exception there, but we don't use a time frame otherwise.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Councilman Beatrice?
Yes. How does this legislation relate to zombie properties? To me, that's, in my area, there's actually right across the street from my house, a beautiful house has been vacant for almost 8 years now. The bank still pays the taxes. They have people come and cut the grass. I know it was already stripped of all its, pipes and everything, and they've restored all that, but they still haven't sold it. And I'm not totally sure, but I would think most of these properties are like that. I was told when I researched this that these banks do not want to sell 1 or 2 properties. They wait until they get multiple properties at auction. So how do you handle something like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And this tool isn't really, it's meant for all vacant buildings broadly, but I wouldn't say it's going to solve for that particular issue by itself. We utilize the New York State zombie law that was passed, I believe, in 2016 to sue banks for the conditions at those properties. We did that last year in coordination with the city of Detroit and Schenectady. We filed a joint lawsuit, 18 properties, 502 building code violations across all 18, which were in all 3 cities. That was a separate action taken to ensure that the banks are, maintaining these properties. But as those properties relate to the vacant building registry, they still need to be registered. And the banks, they'll comply with that. They'll register the property. This is an additional way to impose costs for those actions. It's not going to solve for those properties, but the best way to, send a message to the banks that they need to hurry up and they need to move on these properties instead of sitting on them is to impose costs. So, vacant building registry is one way to do that, but it's that's for everybody, every vacant building owner, not just the banks. The zombie legislation that New York State passed allows municipalities to sue banks for $500 per code violation per day. It's the better way to go after those properties, and we just filed our first lawsuit on that last year, jointly against PHH, Mortgage, and Auckland Financial Services. So we're happy to talk with staff about our experiences using that law as well. My director, Rick LaJoy, just joined on. Rick, did you want to add anything to that?
No, you covered everything really well, Sam. Thanks. I appreciate allowing us to.
Thanks for coming on, Rick.
I'll
Thank
answer
you.
your questions.
How about certain properties? Let's say there was a death in the family. It's a parent's house. There's 2 or 3 kids, 2 or 3 children, and they're keeping up the property, but they're not living there. Why would they have to register for that? I mean, they're paying their taxes, they're keeping their property up, but they're just not living there. They don't know what they want to do, or they may want to give it to a grandkid who's not old enough to take it yet. Nice dog, or it's a cat. But how would they handle that? Huh.
If you want to say, I can jump in on that one. So, as the director, I have the discretion to waive the fee, the associated fee, for that type of situation. Because we look at everything kind of individually as they come in. And that one, I would likely waive the fee. We'd still want it registered, because if we get called there in the middle of the night and there's a burst water pipe or there's a fire or something like that, we want to be able to have whatever current information for access to that, whoever's responsible for that property. So again, it's not meant to penalize those that are upkeeping and taking care of it, but for those that mostly in these cases sit on it with no intent of doing anything with it, or the ability to do anything with it, it allows us to get that important information for emergency situations, as well as hopefully be some sort of deterrent from allowing it to sit there idle for so long that it becomes a quality of life issue.
I have a question. You say we, you said we. Do you keep the database on this for the city of Utica, or is it up to city of Utica to keep it?
Well, our department keeps that information.
For all of
Okay, so the city of Utica will report to Albany,
No.
and then you will have the information?
it. He keeps it for Albany, we would keep it for Utica.
And who would?
Okay, he said we, but it's not for the city of Utica.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to do with the city of Utica, correct?
No, sir. Correct. No, sir.
Okay,
No, we're employees of the city of Albany, so we're speaking from our
Okay.
positions.
So who would pay for this?
all right, one other question is, when you all right, you assess them a fee, $250, I guess, for the first year. So that gives them 365 days to either make a move on this house, or then they get assessed another $500 the following year. I don't know the exact, yes,
That's
500 for
right.
the second year. But when you do that, are they required to pay right there and then, or do you put it under tax rolls? How do you do it there? How do you do it in Albany?
They pay at the time that they register the building.
Okay, as soon as they're listed and registered, they have to pay that fee. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I have a question, thank you. So the registry, it's like registering the building itself, all of that falls upon the property owner. Did you have some way of saying no? Do you send notices to the tax address for vacant houses that you could see were vacant? Hey, we've got a new law, we're asking you to do this, please go ahead and register given our new law. I mean, it's not a matter of our codes officers going out, identifying buildings as vacant, and then us registering them, correct? It's a matter of them registering themselves.
Correct. The onus is on the owner. However, on our part, and Sam specifically, when he first came on board, he kind of went out, he collected, every department seemed to have their own vacant building list of what they believed was vacant. And Sam spent a good allotment of time verifying those addresses. So, for those that were not in compliance, my code officers do send notices of violation, letting them know they're deficient, that they need to register their buildings. Those that don't, it follows the course of, eventually ending up in court prosecution for non-compliance. But those that do comply, at the end of their 12 months, we have a particular system in our system that allows us to know that they're no longer registered. And if they are not registered when they need to be, we'll send out my inspectors will send out the notice of violation. And I'm not sure, also just so, I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but that fee as collected, should the owner, pull that applicable permits to do work, et cetera, that money can be used towards that permit fee. So it's not that they have to pay us all, that money and then also pay for the building permit. They can use that money that they've already given us, deducted off of whatever their fees might be.
Okay, so they register their building, they pay $250, and then a month later, they start the work and they need to pull a building permit. That $250 is gonna count towards the building permit fee. That's how your law's written, right.
That's good. Marcus.
Yeah,
We want to incentivize
Right.
building owners to do the right thing.
Right,
So
that
we
makes
built in
sense.
those carrots. Previous versions of vacant building registries have been only sticks, and so we revised ours a few years ago, to add a couple carrots in there
Okay.
for owners who are trying to do the right thing.
Right. Okay.
And I think it would be good too, for safety reason for the fire department. God forbid there is a fire in that house or something. they know it's vacant. Obviously, you really don't know if it's vacant because a vagrant could be living in there or something, but at least it's, you know, it would help them as they're approaching their attack and things of that nature. So I think from the firefighter standpoint,
Yeah.
fire department standpoint, that would be good because it's listed as a vacant house
Right.
on the registry.
And again, I'm sorry to come in a little
Go
late on
ahead.
this, but so, I don't know if you're also aware, as part of the requirement of registering the building, the owner also has to schedule an interior inspection with one of my staff within 7 days of registering it. And again, that's flexible, we can work with it, but we wanted to give them a time frame from the time they register to allowing us access. Again, I'm not sure how Utica works, but in our municipality, we have quite a few buildings that have been vacant and abandoned for so long, they become a public nuisance, and we have to conduct emergency demolitions. And that's often because, although we can see the outside, we never have the legal authority to go in to know what's happening, you know, until it's too late. So with this requirement, we're not in there nitpicking, you know, minor violations like holes in the wall or missing railings. It's solely for
Right.
water penetration. We want to make sure there's no water infiltration, whether it's a broken pipe or a roof leak or a window leak. We're looking at the foundation to make sure it's structurally intact. So we want to be sure that as long as that building is sitting idle and vacant, that it's not going to become an emergency demolition or a
Right.
public hazard.
Yeah, there's a house in South Utica on Briar Ave that the owner, who shall remain nameless, took out the entire interior, took out everything on the inside. All load-bearing walls are gone.
Really?
So the whole,
Happens-
so the
happens a
whole,
lot more than you think.
an empty shell of a house, and I waited all winter for one good heavy snow to bring that house down, you know, on the roof. One heavy snow. So that, I could see that would be a house where that interior inspection would be really relevant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and most owners, you know, especially for the cooperative owners, they see it as a service, right? You know, we're providing them with a service, we're providing them with experienced set of eyes, you know, for advice and for consultation. So a lot of building owners who register their buildings with us and go through that interior inspection, and they see it as a positive at the end of the day.
It's good, good
Yeah.
safety for
Yeah.
the firefighters if they have to enter that building for
Absolutely.
whatever reason.
Right, right.
That's a good safety feature right
How
there.
many years has Albany been doing this?
Anybody else, any
How
other
long
questions?
has Albany been doing this? Mr. Wells?
We've had the legislation on the books. The original legislation was written in 2000. We revised ours, I believe it was 2018, right?
Correct.
What did you change from the first version of it?
I'm sorry?
I was just curious what you changed from the first version of it in 2000 to 2018. What was working and what wasn't?
So some of the changes in 18 were the mandated interior inspection. But I also, for those vacant buildings, not only do they have to register them and have us do the inspection, but they also need to terminate gas, water, and power. And again, at my discretion, you know, for instance, the people that go away for 7 or 8 months a year and want to come, you know, we're not looking to penalize them and have them, you know, terminate their utilities. But a high majority of those vacant buildings in the city here are not, you know, nobody's paying attention to them. So we want to make sure, again, as these emergency demolitions happen, what we found is the primary source and reasoning for them becoming so unsafe was the water infiltration. So whether the roof was leaking, somebody dropped all the copper and now the water is just flowing through there, or God forbid gas, you know, builds up and explodes. We wanted the utilities off and the house winterized while it sits vacant.
Yeah, we broke out the fee categories based on building size and use in 2018 when we revised it. We also added in those carrots that we talked about, and we changed a few smaller items, the things like, you know, what types of contact information we were looking for, just to better reflect, you know, current realities and to help increase the registration fee as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm probably going to reach out and ask you for the most recent version of your law and just sort of run it side by side by what our attorney gave us. So, thank you very much.
Anybody else have any
Very
other
helpful.
questions? I think we're good to go. It's very informative. I like it.
Yep.
I like it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking your time to help Utica.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to, you know, contribute in any way. So thank you.
I'll be in
Alright.
touch about, you know, I might be following up about that, yeah.
Appreciate your time, thank you.
Have a great night.
Yep.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay.
See, now, prior to the pandemic, we wouldn't have done that, bringing people in, did we do? You know,
No.
it's great, it's just a great
Yeah.
flexibility, you know,
Yeah,
somebody
that's
like
good.
from Albany, you'd hate to drag them all the way out here. So it's great to be able to do this.
I don't know if we have to mute anything or whatever, but I'm not touching it.
They're done, so it's live for us, but there's nobody else on the call.
Yeah.
It's a commercial.
All right, let's move on to the rest of the committee of the whole. I believe the registration, posting of owner and manager info and designation of agent still gonna stay in committee. I know, Councilperson Colosimo, that she sponsored that, but she didn't mention to take it out. Ordinance amending composition of Bureau of Fire. I wanna talk about that for a minute. I know this is legislation regarding the, SAFER grant, but about a week and a half ago, a couple weeks ago, I did have a discussion with both the fire chief and the assistant chief. And actually, the mayor kind of tipped in on the discussion as well. And they discussed about adding 4 lieutenants. So right now, they're at 22 lieutenants, so taking it off the firefighter EMT. So right now, we have 93 firefighters and firefighter EMTs. That would be reduced by 4, and then we'd add 4 lieutenants. So that would bring the 22 to 26. The total count would not be touched. It'd still be 124. And the reason, you know, that they discussed this with me, obviously I was on the fire department with the public safety, and they wanted me to present it to the council. I want to see if I had any support on it. And the reason they're thinking this way, it's going to be in about additional $28,000 to add 4 lieutenants from the ranks of firefighters. But in the long run, they say it'll probably be a wash, because when lieutenants are on vacation or sick leave or comp time, whatever, they have to fill in with either firefighters or other lieutenants, and they have a hard time of establishing the list or getting enough lieutenants to come back and work for straight time, so it does cost the city overtime if they're ordered back. So let's just say the most senior lieutenant, he gets called first, second one gets called, third one, they go all the way down the line until someone accepts a fill-in for a comp day or a vacation day or something like that. So when they go through the list, now they go back to order someone to come in. So when you order someone to come in, it's time and a half. So it is costly at times because you can't find anyone. Plus, a lot of the officers are actually working on duty that day. So they couldn't obviously do duplicate services. So what I wanted to ask the council is, if I put legislation together, if I had some support on this, and it is backed by the chief, the assistant chief, and the mayor said if you could, talk with the council and they'll support it, I think he's gonna be on board as well. So basically what it is just adding additional 4 lieutenants, taking away from 93 firefighters. And right now we have 2 lieutenants that are on 207A. So we have to fill those slots. Every time their shift comes up, we're filling 2 of those slots with callbacks. I call callbacks, and that's what it's called when you fill in a vacant position. And then you'll have 2 floaters as well that would fill in when they're on vacation or sick or comp time, whatever it may be. So does anybody have any questions? Fire away.
I have just a math question. The numbers that you were giving just now are from the first page of this ordinance.
Yes.
Those are the numbers you want to be moving it up to. What are the current numbers?
Well,
Those
it's-
aren't the numbers of.
Yeah, well, right now, the total is 124,
Mhm.
but I would
There's 22 lieutenants.
be deducting 4 from 93, change the firefighters to 89, and the fire lieutenants to 26, but the total would be the same.
So there's 4 firefighters that
Yeah, I've got way too many questions on that.
Huh?
I've got tons of questions on that.
Okay, fire away, because I had a discussion with them. And listen, I don't want this to be done right away. I want you to
Sure.
do your homework, check with the fire chief, and the assistant chief, and they have any questions,
But it
go
would
ahead
be
and
4
ask.
internal promotions then to lieutenant?
What's that?
It would be 4 firefighters getting a promotion internally
Correct,
to
correct.
lieutenant.
4 fighters would get promoted, and our complement of firefighters would be.
And it would be 1
89.
per platoon, like shift?
Right.
Is that how that,
I
because there's
wouldn't
4?
support anything until we
And
get.
they said it would be
the
beneficial
information
to
back.
the department. And I asked, I said, what about, promoting 8? And they really said, let's not promote 8 right now. They wanted to wait because we didn't get the results of the SAFER grant. If and when we do, they said that they would look into that and maybe increase it by 4 when that time comes. So that was something that I wanted to run by the council, and that's why I brought it out tonight, because it was in front of me, and I says, let me bring it out and see if I have any little support. But I want you to do your homework.
I'm
I
certainly
want you to
open
talk
to
about
it. I'm open to it.
the assistant chief and the chief, and see what you think on that.
What, so as far as the SAFER grant goes and promoting these, we're not doing anything, we're just doing 4 internal promotions? What effect does the SAFER grant have on this
You
at
wouldn't
all?
be
Not that you'd be adding 8 additional firefighters, so I'm sure you're gonna have to
You would have to
add
adjust the complement.
officers
Right,
as
so if you
well.
did 4 now, and then when the SAFER grant came, you did 4 again, what's the difference?
Right, but why would you add 8 officers until you know what the SAFER grant is? What if the SAFER grant only gives you 4? That's the whole point of getting
Yeah,
the
but if the
SAFER
SAFER,
grant back.
what they're
The SAFER
saying,
grant's only for firefighters. They didn't apply for the application for promotions. So you have to wait until you get the SAFER grant no matter what.
why?
No, we
For
don't
what
have,
firehouses you're manning, who's
Yeah,
on
but you
what
got the
rate,
same- this-
what additional
Yeah,
services
but right,
you're offering.
right here,
I mean,
right,
I'm just saying, you've got floating officers now, yeah. So what happens when the SAFER grant comes back, you can add an additional
yeah, but this
firefighters.
regardless of what the SAFER grant says.
that's
you
a
got
question you wanna ask the
124.
chief,
You know,
go ahead, fire away.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to.
Okay.
I can just say that.
Well, I'm just saying, it was, they approached me on it, and I sat there and I listened, and I had questions. I would try to push for 8, it just wasn't gonna be 8 at this time. They said, let's try with the 4, let's see how it works. Financially, it wouldn't have much of a cost. It's an increase of $28,000 in salary, but in the long term, over the year, they feel that would probably be a wash because they don't have to pay the overtime, the fill-in time. They'd have a couple officers on hand ready to fill in.
So looking for the money in the budget, they're saying that because they're utilizing out of title pay right now, it's
Correct.
compensating almost the same amount. Is that what you're
Right,
saying?
if a firefighter moves in that slot and acts as out-of-title lieutenant,
Right,
Gets paid
the
same.
firefighter has to be on the lieutenant's list
okay.
in order to qualify. So if I was number 1 on the list, and they went through the lieutenant's list, and nobody wanted that position, they could revert to a person who was on the civil service list for lieutenant and ask that person to fill in. But that person has got to get paid lieutenant's pay for that 24-hour shift or 14-hour shift.
I mean, a
whatever.
verbal statement from the chief would be great, but if you can get something in writing from the chief and our budget director stating the same thing that you're, bringing it all to our table, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and like I said, it'll give us time to do your homework,
Yep.
talk with the chief, and I'll ask something in writing, maybe a request
His request, yeah.
to the council and possibly changing it. Any other questions?
Not on this, but I have another subject, as long as we have a little time.
Okay, so that's just something I want to run by you, so I've been looking into it a little bit further, and if you have any questions, go ahead.
So, and then getting back to the home registry, is that staying in committee tonight, or are we voting?
Yeah, I'm not,
Yeah.
yes.
You're just staying in?
Yeah, I think we should wait for the commissioner of codes,
Who would,
and let's
Just
discuss
asking,
it with him
because
and
it
see
is
if he's
pretty
on
good.
board with it.
just asking now, who would be in charge? Would the city have to hire another employee to collect the money and take care of all that? Who would do that?
I think you would issue, if you're a codes commissioner, like you issue a fine, I'd say it would be issued through codes.
Yeah, but
And they would
they're
be
saying that
responsible.
you have to go to, you gotta register these houses. So somebody, who's gonna do the?
It would be one of the secretaries in the codes departments. And so the talk is about, there is some consideration, and this is something that the codes commissioner has wanted anyway, which is to give a small stipend, a small additional stipend to one of the secretaries, because they're all women, would be taking on the task of maintaining this list and.
And we're not talking hundreds and hundreds of vacant houses,
No.
maybe,
Yeah.
Maybe 2
But,
dozen.
but that's
if
where
that
the
many.
work it would be in codes, and it would be one of the code secretaries who would manage the list, yeah.
Okay.
Can I bring up a separate subject?
Yeah, I just want to go through the rest of the
Oh,
committee of the
okay.
whole. Resolution number 11, requesting district councilperson to allocate funding to establish a business directly at, we're still contemplating that. We don't want to bring that out and
No,
discuss it.
I just, we don't even know what we're doing.
Yeah, you wanted someone to come in and speak about it, correct? Okay, so we'll wait on that. Board of Assessment Review, resolution number 1.
I'll speak to that. So Mr. Moncari has not managed to give me additional verification of his address, so I'd like to pull that legislation. So I'll discharge that tonight.
Discharge it.
And then I do have someone in mind. I've put out a request for someone else who I think could serve in this capacity, Steve Rafaro, if he's willing. He'd be good. So if anybody else has ideas about who might be good, this is the Board of Assessment Review. They meet once a year, takes them more or less a full day. They do have to go through some training in the month of June. And I think we pay them, don't we pay them $500 or something like that for the day's work? Realtors are the kind of obviously qualified people, but Mr. Moncari simply didn't respond to my request for additional.
Okay.
So I will discharge
We'll
that
pull it
legislation
and wait till we
tonight.
get someone else that's interested.
Yeah, so like I say, I put in a call to Steve Rafaro, and would anybody have an objection to Steve Rafaro? So if I hear back from him, and maybe at the next meeting, I'll get a resolution in front of us. He won't be hard to verify that he lives. So
Okay.
I'll discharge that tonight.
All right, 508 Melgate Street, ordinance number 8.
We'll wait for the public
Councilman.
hearing and we'll take a vote.
Yep.
We're gonna be out the vote, we're gonna take it out, okay. Moving that out, okay, it's 1673 West Street, the
Same
same?
thing, wait for the public hearing and
Alright.
take the vote.
Okay, I think we went through the committee of the whole. Information, anybody else have anything they wanna discuss?
So I have a quick thing to discuss, just to see how people feel about this. I was looking at the composition of the UIDA, which it turned out is not in our charter, but is in state law. And so it is described in state law as being, and the UIDA oversees all the pilot programs. So they are the ones who authorize all the pilot programs, as well as like sales tax exemptions, things like that. So there are 5 members to the UIDA, and they are all appointed by the mayor. I was wondering whether anybody had any interest in, we would have to, I believe, ask our senator and our state assembly member if they would change the state law in order to change the composition. And that my thought was, and I'm not super wedded to this, but I was wondering if anybody else, it would give us a little bit more of a role to play in pilots and sales exemptions and things like that if we appointed 2 members of the council to the UIDA.
I believe even if they do that, it still has to be done by charter revision. That's just permission to even get us there.
Okay,
Because we're taking away power from the mayor, which the
Okay.
judge could explain that to you a little better.
okay. But,
Because they would change it in the local law that the council would be able to have the power to go through a charter revision or such and such, which I'm almost 100% positive, because I think we did look into the possibility of actually amending that before.
okay,
And because we're taking away that power, we still would have to make that
Okay.
done by way of referendum, or something along those lines.
okay.
Correct.
All right, that's interesting. Okay, all right.
Generally,
Thank you.
this is the law.
Thank you. So that helps
Yeah,
a lot.
basically can't do it?
It's not like
No,
we're.
Good
we
idea.
can do it. She's
Yeah,
not
but
saying
it's
we
not
can't
like
do
we're
it.
requesting for the state legislator to amend,
Right.
like the fees. You're actually taking away the power,
Of
and,
the mayor.
and that's the problem with the city, is that it is a mayoral-run city. Like
Right.
really the only powers that we have are to legislate and amend the complement is the way the charter rules.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean,
So how
even
would,
if they.
how would you do that? You'd have to like put it on a ballot for the people to vote on, or how would you do
I
it?
think
Yeah.
if some would be simpler,
Yeah.
great idea, but I think it'd be simpler already, because number one is gonna have the 3 appointments anyways, okay?
Right.
All you want is
Yeah.
communication, so if you wanna put a resolution in, anytime they do have a meeting, that their minutes or communications be
I thought of
brought
that
to
too. Right. That's another avenue that we could go, is just that we
If you wanna do
require
that.
that the UIDA, right, on some kind of regular schedule, report to us.
Quarterly.
Now, as it is, their minutes are public minutes. I mean, anybody can go look at their minutes anytime we want. They're a public board, but,
So just send minutes
If
to us.
you look at the charter, every board and commission is supposed to report to the council every 3 months,
That's correct.
but they don't.
But they
So
just don't,
You
right.
can just put in the Put in a resolution requesting that they follow the charter to report to the common council on a quarterly basis.
Because even if you did get the 2 in and the mayor had 3,
You still got the juice.
he's got the juice.
He could veto it, it doesn't make a difference, and then just leave that in abstain. I mean, that's even if you get to that point, but the chances of you getting that point with changing general municipal law are slim to none.
Yes, it's.
Yeah. One other thing,
I just wanted to raise it, I knew that it was something that,
Good idea, though.
see, I mean,
I would just request that they submit, just request that they give it to you quarterly, like they're supposed to.
just give us their minutes quarterly, you mean?
Yeah, but I mean,
Or
you can get the- they do
report.
report, they actually do hold pretty good minutes, I will say.
Okay.
Like, they're scripted and everything, even when they have the Zoom meetings and stuff like that, but
Well, if they send it to the clerk is just send it to us.
It could just be one of our regular reports.
they're actually supposed to report to us, so,
I got it.
Okay.
like, come here.
So as in, they're supposed to come to
Exactly.
us every, like Jack's Faith is supposed to come down here every 3 months and say, here's what we got done in the last 3 months. Well, would people support a resolution asking him to do that?
We used to do it to department heads all the time to show up at a council meeting.
Right, all you gotta do is ask them.
Right.
You need a resolution.
Right, okay, so
If
did
they
you-
don't do it, then we'll have to.
Okay, so every 3 months, right,
Then you
okay.
fine them.
just one other thing I want to cover, and then we can take a few minutes there. Just that the Civilian Public Safety Board, I know we had 3 members that are interested. Councilman Williamson had 2, Councilperson Friend had 1. Do have a couple questions here that was drawn up, but I asked Councilperson Friend to do so. What I'm going to do is just forward it to Councilperson Williamson, and maybe he could give them these questions, and you already know the questions, so you'll approach your person, see if we can get some answers on it.
Give them to the clerk.
Anybody who wants to contact these members, there's information provided on our email, and if you have to go through Councilman Williamson or Councilperson Friend, go ahead and do that. If you want to get a hold of the persons that are involved. But I'd like to move on this, maybe by next meeting, we can have some legislation drawn up, and let's pick the 2 candidates, so we can, and then we'll move it upstairs and let them pick whatever they have to pick
Right,
to
we have a
get
bunch
this
of
board
information
going.
from Mr. Nichols, but do we want him to answer the same questions as well, or just
So
go?
we have 3 candidates for 2 positions?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, and I just want to
Then
be fair
just-
with them all, so they all have the same question, they all get different answers, whatever, and then we'll take a vote on who we should pick, and
You-
we move on.
Can I just,
Go ahead.
what we used to do is we actually used to give them questions, interview them, come in, ask them any more questions that they may have. Usually we never went past the questions that we had, and then did a straw poll where, you know, it would be like a separate vote, like, that we would just ask each other, like, you write a name down, and whatever those 2 would go, that's who you would pick, that way you're not really embarrassing the
And
person.
she's right,
on-
it should
on
be
the
done in
floor.
executive session, Samantha's right, we usually do this in executive session. when we
Okay.
do it.
Because you don't, I mean, you don't,
As
if
far as-
they're all good candidates, why would you not
Right.
wanna choose all 3? And then when you don't
Okay.
vote
The
for the one
discussion's in
person-
there in executive session, if you wanna bring them in the screen, that's fine too.
I don't know, I mean, whatever you suggest as a
It's
council,
up
I
to my
mean,
colleagues.
we're all here together, I'm okay with whatever process, I just like to get this,
So here's your
Behind
option,
us.
you can screen them in executive session, each candidate, which is the fairest way to do it. And after that's done, as Samantha said, you do a straw vote, and we come out and vote for the
Yeah,
candidate.
that's the way to do
That
it.
sounds good.
all right.
All
So
right,
just,
so
I would
why
give
don't you
them,
do
I
it
would
like
give
that?
them the questions that you ask all 3 candidates.
Yep.
Give them 2 weeks to respond, then the following meeting, they come in, give them the interview process, and then you do the
So,
straw
so
poll.
let's say that we get those 3 questions to all 3 of them tomorrow, we give them 10 days, so that by the time of the next meeting, we have
That's
everybody's
fine.
answer,
Okay.
and we can do that by way of email.
At like our 5 o'clock meeting like that, you
Yeah.
would do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
you could do it in, committee of the whole, just go in executive session.
Right.
All right, that sounds good.
All right.
I'll make sure that the 3 candidates get those 3 questions. I'll just talk to you about that.
Okay, yeah.
Does she have an email address for Mr. Ciccarelli?
Yeah.
Do you know, Mark?
Straight on the legislation. 1019 McQuaid Ave.
No,
Does
it's,
she have an
No
email?
email.
Oh, email, I'm sorry.
I don't know, she probably.
Right.
I would just send, honestly, I would send them all 3 a certified letter, especially if they're gonna
okay.
be on the civilian board, I mean, which is pretty,
Okay.
I would.
Mike, you
I
don't
would-
like the
I'll
sign in
ask-
front of you?
I'll ask.
Yeah, good idea, good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
And
ask,
then
and I'll take charge of that.
We'll get the answers, we'll review them in private, and then we'll discuss it in private.
Yep.
All right, I think I'm done. Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Committee of the whole? Adjourn.
this council meeting. Today is May 4th, and we're starting a little late, a couple minutes late. Let's start with the ordinance number 1, which is on Belmont Street. Council members, this was a woman who was, is in a wheelchair. She has to walk across the street. There's no parking in her house, and she has one vehicle. And she asked for one side parking, one spot that she could park her car there and walk across the street. And if my colleagues don't mind, I'd like to help her out. Okay, thank you very much. Got it. Ordinance number 2. This is the one that I'm going to give Samantha the table. She would like to get into specifics of this. Samantha, would you like to go over this piece of
Sure.
legislation?
So basically, back in 2014, Sergeant Uraniak put together an entire school zone plan as far as what the speed limits were, stripage, signage, all this stuff, okay? Here we are, 2022, and there's just a little piece of the section under, there's two pieces. One is where it says all school zones should follow the 15 miles per hour zone. Then it states, except indicated in another part of the code. In the other part of the code, you're under section 2-16-369, where it says schedule speed limits. So it says, upon basis of the engineering and traffic events investigations, 25 miles per hour is established as the maximum speed, blah, 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 blah. Then it gets down where it says Deerfield Drive East in the vicinity of JFK School. The proposed legislation states as amended to 15 miles per hour, okay? There's a couple of things that bother me. Number one, why are we amending something that it says established per 25 miles per hour, okay? Just, it makes everything confusing. So my point is, instead of amending it from 25, which there's other things that happened that indicated that the speed limit was 30, not 25, okay, which makes it even more confusing, is just eliminating that subsection, Deerfield Drive East in the vicinity of JFK, and rescinding it totally out of that code so that you're not wondering what the speed limit is from 25 to 15 when it will just follow the general code of what school zone should be at 15 miles per hour.
So, may I?
Yeah, sure.
So what you're saying is you're rescinding the exemption that Deerfield Drive East had, and which reverts it to, let me finish, which means that part of the road will revert to the general code, which is in the vicinity of schools, it's 15.
Right.
No,
She's right. And
Yeah,
that's
but-
why it's confusing. Like, first of all, I don't even like the word vicinity. Like that to me
I was gonna say
is
that's
not, it's a school zone. Like, school zones are, are
the purpose of this whole legislation was to make every school in the city at 15 miles per hour.
correct.
That's what the purpose of the
That's
whole
the
thing.
2014 legislation.
Right, and that's what my point
Well,
is.
yeah, but it wasn't. 2014, if you went at JFK, it's
20.
25, the other places are 15, and all this is trying to do is clean everything up and keep everybody
So when
at
we did
15.
the legislation, it was all supposed to be 15 miles per hour, okay?
And now you're-
Then there was another section of the code that says, well, in the vicinity of JFK, it's 25, which made it confusing, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying, there should be no subsection of,
And so what
that
you're
in there.
doing is rescinding.
right, now that I see that, I don't wanna have Joe's legislation
Alright.
be held up,
Hold-
but there's other schools, like, we already amended that Keys Road, there's Barton Ave, I mean, so those should be totally eliminated out of it, and they should all follow the same school zone
I'm
code.
totally good with that.
Alright.
Which I'll do that after, but I don't wanna, you can pass this, and then I'll just go just
Well,
rescind those out of those
the one we're
subsection
gonna
totally.
pass is the new version, the one that says rescind.
Rescind,
Okay, and then we're not gonna worry about the other one.
no,
We're just throwing that one.
yeah.
away.
Councils?
I haven't seen that, but
Go ahead.
I haven't seen the legislation, but that's fine. But there are a number of other school zones or school areas listed in that legislation as well.
Right, and that's why, and we already amended, so like it says as amended, like, and that's why I wasn't even realizing it at the time. We passed the legislation in 2013, that's why I had to go look up for Keys Road in the vicinity of that. So now that I look at it and I'm reading it, just to make sure it all flows, that we don't have any discussion or discrepancy on school zones, they should all be 15 miles per hour.
Great.
So, and like I said, at the time, I think even Sergeant Uraniak might have passed it afterwards, because I even emailed him just now, like, asked him if he remembered. So, I mean, just from here on out, just to be clear, we will have zero discussion on what school zone speed limits are.
Absolutely.
So-
Why,
It's just gonna be changed to rescind.
Well,
why would we make
Yep.
an exemption?
Yep, she got a new one.
That's all, it was just,
Yep.
some schools, for certain reasons, the signage was wrong. This is just to clean it up, that's all it is, and so everybody's in the same.
So you're basing your decision on another section that states that about the 15 mile an hour, right? The only problem you may have is that it's not clear in the legislation.
That is clear in the original legislation. That's why it wasn't clear in this legislation to keep amending it. Does that make sense? So the schools should be,
Yeah.
the schools should be.
But if I
rescinded
want to
totally
look
out of
up
that.
Deerfield Drive East and find out the mileage and find out what it is, it's not clear in that original legislation, right? Yes or
In
no?
the school zone legislation.
Does it spell it out?
is.
We got in Samantha, I just want to ask you
School
something.
zone
Don't you think
legislation, yes.
legislation should be spelled out simple?
School zone legislation, yes.
You know how some people interpret, because there is parts of this legislation which I have to stand up for Stephanie.
And I haven't read I haven't seen the
Right.
school zone
There is
legislation.
parts of this legislation Stephanie produced that stated very clearly in front of different schools that there was 15 miles an hour. Now, if I'm looking, I'm just thinking about in the
I understand
future.
what you're
Let's
saying.
think about in the future, Sam. I'm thinking in the future that a person, a new clerk walks in, she's not familiar, and she's looking down, oh, there's nothing in front of Deerfield Drive East.
Well,
Okay?
there would be, it would say, instead of saying amended, it would say rescinded, so that we don't even have.
Yeah,
any
but each
discussion
one,
of it.
remember each one of those streets under 216, 365,
Right,
each one of those streets in front of the school states very clearly 15 miles an hour.
but not all of them do.
That's
Not
why
all
we're
of them
doing
do.
this.
That's why we're doing this. That's why we're amending it to say 15.
There are exceptions.
Because of this section of the code. Because this section of the code was in there when we passed all schools 15.
So you think a person that's reading the code in the future will be better off?
I don't even want to get into the other problem that I have with the legislation not being rescinded. Okay, so that's a totally different one, and I'm not gonna discuss it on the
Well,
floor.
it's up to my colleagues which way you want to go.
It would
with
make sense
Did,
to rescind,
here,
and then
Stephanie,
I'll add the other two in.
Can we have Stephanie take a look at it? And we'll go
This,
from there?
this one is fine. I haven't seen the school zone legislation to confirm that it's gonna do what
Did you print that
you're
out for
wanting
me?
it to do. So I've
The
only
school zone
seen,
one?
and that's the only one I've looked at, which lists a number of schools spelled
Yeah,
out.
there's another section that Samantha's referring to.
Oh, it's right here. Here you go.
Let's take a look at it. All right, why don't you take a look at that, and we'll get back to it in a few minutes. Is that all right, Steph? Take a look at it, contemplate, and we'll get back to you. All right? All right, thank you. Our next piece of legislation, council members, is the ordinance that's temporary moratorium on casinos. There is an attached piece of legislation where there is a poll, if you guys want, that's that piece of paper with all the numbers on it. If the council doesn't mind, I'd like to refer this to committee for now.
Sure.
Okay. Our next piece of legislation is for a marriage officer, Tim Julian. Is everybody in favor of this? I understand, you know, no, I'm just kidding. Okay. Just kidding.
His son is getting married somewhere where
Stepson,
they have to be,
Yeah.
his stepson, and then they have to make it legal when they get back here.
absolutely. Yeah.
Could have just did Universal Life Ministries like I am. Could marry people all over the world.
Samantha, take Samantha, tell them to take
Yeah.
Samantha what you can
I'll
marry
marry
him
her.
out there.
I'll marry
Get
her.
her
I'm
out.
trained- I married
Get her out for a
married
while.
about 70 people, so I think I'm pretty good.
There you go.
Get her out.
Our next piece of legislation, a resolution authorizing the Utica Center, St. Mary Mount Carmel, Blessed Sacrament. We have some wine and beer. Everybody okay with this?
I also want to show you this.
Next piece of legislation is authorizing wine and beer for X Matt's Brewery Company. This is for the Courtyard and their 100-year anniversary. Everybody okay with this? Okay.
Then there's a problem with-
Next piece of legislation would be a resolution for the wine and beer for the Utica Zoo. Everybody okay with that?
No. Right here.
Our next piece of legislation is sponsored by Joe Beatrice. Councilman Beatrice, would you like to give us a quick summary on the issue with this legislation?
Yes, we also, we have to waive the Thursday rule on this, I believe, correct?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No.
This is, yeah, well, this is basically cleaning up, signs, no parking signs, and there's an area, on Coventry Ave, right by Tasty Treat, and where cars are just parking on both sides of the road, so when you're coming down Service Place, you can't really see what's coming down. So he's taken, like 40 feet from the intersection to put no parking on each side of the road.
You good with that?
I'm fine with it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I initiated
It's your
it.
district.
What the business say?
What's that?
The business.
Well, it's up the road from the business, yeah. It's not where the parking is there, you know what I mean? It's up the road.
All right, I don't want to talk too much about 9 and 10. It was my mistake, so let's move to the next one.
Thank you. Abbott Costello. Who's down first?
I said it was my mistake. I made a
It
boo-boo.
was the northwest
It
side.
don't happen too often, but I did make a boo-boo.
All right.
Yes, I don't want to talk about it. Thank
Your
you.
quote
Oh,
over
by the
there.
way, nope, it does, yeah, one needs a Thursday rule, so we would have to wait the Thursday rule after. Our next piece. Relax. Our next piece of legislation is the one we have to decide, council members, for our Wednesday in July and our Wednesday in August. Is there a consensus?
I had raised an issue with the July meeting, but I'm good in that first week, if that's what you guys are gonna do.
All right, so if council's okay, first week in, first Wednesday in July, first Wednesday in August? Anybody opposed?
July 6th.
I'm sorry, first, yes, July 6th?
So the actual date?
And August 3rd?
July 6th, August 3rd. Thank you.
Everybody in favor?
Yeah, that's fine.
Very good. All right, let's get back to that piece of legislation for the school.
I understand what she's saying, that she's stating that if you just rescind it, you're rescinding the entire,
No.
Okay.
No, that's not my point.
okay,
Why
so then
would
what
this
is
pass
your
Joe's
point?
and then you guys work on that?
So, I,
What's the point of keeping amending?
I don't have a-
something?
I don't have a problem if you want to rescind just Deerfield Drive East in the vicinity of JFK School. The only concern that I have is there's other schools listed in that
That was my
Schedule
argument,
N
yes.
that refer to the speed limit being 15 miles per hour. So unless there's a general ordinance that says these are all the school zones, which I don't know that there is,
Correct.
then, and
So, okay.
so my recommendation is just to keep it as,
Is. That's
As
what I
is.
thought, because
But
to make it
if-
simple.
but there are because there are other schools, I think there was one,
So,
There's only two.
so there's one that says Keys Road in the vicinity of General Herkimer.
Which says
School,
15 miles
per
an hour.
hour. Note this area is a
You know,
school
Samantha,
zone.
that's the only reason why she's saying that.
I agree, but that's what I'm saying. I will take this and I will rewrite.
If you wanna
I
rewrite-
will rescind the entire legislation.
If you wanna-
and replace it with ones without the school.
If you want to redo the whole thing and clean it all up after, that's fine, but why don't we do what she recommended for now, and then we'll go from
I
there.
just don't wanna keep it in there at all. Like, that's what I'm saying, that I gotta amend it
Right,
with
it
that
ain't-
actually in there.
Let's just commit this for now, and 2 weeks from now, do it all.
Wait, but do you get what I'm saying? Now I'm gonna have to rescind the legislation within there as amended.
That's okay, we can clean it up after.
And where did other schools go? Like, do you get what
why
I'm saying?
can't
It
you
just
just say,
doesn't make
why
sense.
can't we just do legislations cut and dry? All school zones are 15 miles an hour. That's what we.
Because
Well-
that's what you have, but it's still a section in the code that states this.
We'd have to rescind the whole section
You
that's
gotta rescind it.
separate, makes it separate, okay, after. So let Samantha do her homework on it, so we'll go from there. Yeah, we'll pass it tonight.
You're passing the original two?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's what I'm
Original two.
saying, so now what original two?
Oh, wait, no, what do you mean original? The one that was
Well, there was
originally.
a backup.
The ones that say 15 miles on it.
Yeah.
Not the rescinded one, the
Right.
original one. The amended one.
The one that states 15 miles on it.
Ordinance amending.
The
Yeah.
one that was in effect.
216.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Samantha, if you get time, if you need help doing the legislation, we'll work
I agree,
together.
that's
We'll
all
get
I'm
it
saying,
done.
now we're amending.
I
it
understand what
just
you're
to have
saying.
to Remove it from the same
I
code.
got you.
Well, guess what? If it's been this way, if it's easier, don't do nothing, let her do it in 2 weeks. I don't care. It's a stop
We could
sign.
leave the whole thing alone, and then 2 weeks from now.
Honestly, that would just be better off for me, that way, instead of going, if you're okay to wait 2 more weeks,
It's
it's
your
up
call.
to you.
It's your
I don't care. You've been waiting years for it, so it doesn't make a difference.
Well, we've been waiting years because we always thought it was 15, and we read this.
All right, Joe, you want to throw it in committee, Joe?
We'll
You
put the whole
put it
thing
in committee
aside.
and then next week we'll.
I will
vote on it.
rescind
That's
this,
fine.
and then adjust the other
I don't
legislation
even think
for
we
the
put it in
schools.
committee. We
Good
just
move.
don't deal with it tonight, and we start fresh.
Right,
at the
that's
next
fine, that's fine, and I will rescind this, I will reschedule the.
So Joey, you want to pull this legislation from the table?
Yeah, pull it from the table.
meeting. Please, what do you think about that?
That's fine, and then my only recommendation would be is if you're gonna remove all the school zones or school areas that are listed in that Schedule N, is to add it somewhere in there, list all of the designated school zones and make it clear that it's spelled
Yes,
out that
And
this
that's
is
what
a,
you should do.
And then
anyway.
I'll take out except otherwise in the code
well,
where it's stated, because
Well, I
there's
would leave-
no other except otherwise
Says
stated.
they speed by
Do you
jail.
see what I'm saying?
no,
at the
well,
bottom?
that would need to,
So I could amend that.
no, that
just
would
say
need to
all
stay,
schools.
because, no, that would need to stay, because there's some in Schedule N that are 35 miles per hour.
But we don't want that.
Then if you don't want that, then,
I was just
then all those would
remove-
have to be amended too.
So I'm gonna remove all those, I'm gonna rescind this, I'm gonna replace it without any school zones. Then I'm gonna take the legislation that's right there, that's in front of you, and just say all school zones are 15 miles an hour with the school zones listed underneath this. Because there should be no except otherwise, all school zones should be 15. And then there will never be another discussion as long as we live.
You guys should talk about this in between the caucus and the main meeting.
Yeah, can I close this meeting? You guys can continue your conversations?
Does that make sense?
Make a motion to close? Pre-meeting conference
That's
now
fine.
Then I'll
closed.
just list all the schools
That's fine.
in that.
2022, I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Common Council to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Aiello, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Urban, Beatrice, Williamson, Classimo Testa, DeBrango, Galimi, all present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for the deceased members of the council. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first order of business this evening is the minutes from the previous meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion to accept and rescind? All right, we've got a motion from DeBrango, a second from Testa. We're going to rescind the reading of those minutes. If anyone's opposed, you say it now. Okay, it's been dispensed. The minutes were posted on Eco 360 for the council and public to view. We have a public hearing this evening for Ordinance Number 8, 508 Millgate Street, and Ordinance Number 10, 1673 West Street. There is no one signed up to speak on behalf of those properties, so the public hearing is now closed. We'll now move on to pull those properties from committee. Let's see here. Is there a motion to pull Ordinance 8, sale of 508 Millgate Street from committee?
Yep, go ahead. Second.
All right, Williamson. Who was the second?
Brango.
All right, Williamson and DeBrango. Any opposed to pulling that from committee? All right. It's on the floor for a vote. This is the ordinance approving the designation of Joe Fricola as an eligible and qualified project sponsor pursuant to Article 15 of General Municipal Law for the purpose of the sale of 508 Millgate Street for a sum of $20,000 from the Urban Renewal Authority. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Is there a motion to pull ordinance number 10, the sale of 1673 West Street? Motion from Friend. Second? Second from Miola. Any opposed to pulling this from committee? All right, the sale of 1673 West Street is on the floor. This is an ordinance approving the designation of Nur Alam bin Abdul Ghaffar and Akima binti Rahman as eligible qualified project sponsor pursuant to Article 15 for the sale of 1673 West Street for a sum of $250 from the URA. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
There you go. Okay, that closes all the properties that were heard during the public hearing. We have no one signed up to speak for public comment period. Public comment period is now closed. We don't have any common council guests. We do have communications from the mayor. This communication is to Council President Mike Galimi, members of the Common Council, and City Clerk Melissa Shortino, from Mayor Robert Palmieri, May 4th, 2022. Due to recent weather events, DPW is behind its regular green waste pickup, but is working diligently to get back on schedule. Throughout the summer, the city will be removing ash trees along Varick Street, Nurses Park, and Franklin Square. It has been determined that these trees are dead and need to be taken down. The removal of trees on Varick Street will be done in conjunction with the beautification of the streetscape. A reminder for anyone wanting to participate in the Memorial and or Independence Day parades to register online at the Utica Center for Development website. It is www.ucdevelopment.org/parades. What are we talking?
I will not be here. If it's on that Monday.
Oh, okay, all right, I'll keep going. All right, the Memorial Day Parade is taking place on Monday, May 30th at 10 a.m. and the Independence Day Parade on Monday, July 4th, 10 a.m. There will be a groundbreaking ceremony for the Olbiston Revitalization Project taking place next month. All logistical details will be shared once it's finalized. That ends the mayor's message to the council this evening. Everything cool? We good? All right. Reports of the city officers. Corporation Counsel, Stephanie DeGiorgio.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Lieutenant Berger, UPD. Thank you. Chief Ingersoll.
Nothing.
Thank you very much. Do we have a cash report this evening?
No cash report.
Petitions, remonstrances, and appeals. First District, Council Member Keedy Aiello. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council Member Robert Burmaster.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. There must be some party I'm not invited to, not aware of or something here. All right, Third District, Councilperson Friend, you have the floor.
Don't panic, I have a few.
All right, here we go. All right.
So a couple of things. It was a really busy week last week. One of the things I got to do was on Friday evening at the ski chalet, we had there was a meeting where the local skateboard community got to talk to the designer of the new skateboard park that's coming to Proctor Park and give their input into sort of the kinds of things that they wanted. Councilmember Aiello had organized that and gotten the word out to that community, and like 40 people showed up. It was really great. They had lots of really specific desires that they expressed to the designer, and the designer was really happy to take in all that really specific stuff. So that was it was really great, and I feel very optimistic about our community and those good things that are happening, and those, especially those really important good things happening for young people in the community. So that was really great, and I really commend Councilmember Aiello for organizing that and for getting a really terrific turnout. And then on Saturday, I went to the NAACP Utica Oneida County chapter had sponsored a poet laureate and youth poet laureate contest, or a juried in order to name a poet laureate and youth poet laureate to our area. And so I went to the recognition ceremony, which was at the Munstitute on Saturday afternoon, and that was a really terrific event. And I got to hear some really great poetry by young poets here in Utica and Oneida County. And that was another really terrific event that made me feel very good about the community and all the great creative things that people are doing with their time. So those were two great events over the weekend. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Fourth District, Councilmember and Majority Leader Frank Viola, you have the floor.
Was the Mars bar sticking to your teeth?
It's a crack. It's a crack. Thank you. You put all this chocolate.
Then he wonders why he passes out.
Yeah.
Sugar overdose.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to, everybody had trouble during the last snowstorm. A lot of trees went down. In many neighborhoods across the city of Utica, they took 51 tractor and trailer, dump truck loads out of North Utica so far. They will get to the rest of the city. Please have patience. In addition, those of us who put the trees and branches, whatever out there, try not to put them into the road too much. Please put them at the curb, because a lot of people are going in and out of the areas, and it's getting a little bit dangerous for one lane. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Fifth District, Council Member Dennis Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I went to, I live right next door to Reverend Skates, which is great. And her food giveaway this time, they actually had a blood pressure drive, which turned out to be pretty good. They had professionals out there working with some of the people to take their blood pressure in the community, and people came from all over the place to be involved in that. And I also got to talk to some of the young people in the district about some of the things that they would like to see. So we had a good, lively discussion about some of the things they would like to see over the summer. So I'll have to pass that on to the mayor as soon as I get a chance. And that's about all I have.
Thank you very much. Sixth District, Councilmember Joe Beatrice, you have the floor.
Yeah, the only thing I got is, I'll tell Councilman Miola the same thing I told the mayor yesterday when he told us about the 60 dump trucks they took out. The people in North Utica, they take care of their property, so that's why we have so much stuff out there.
All right.
Thank you.
You're good? Councilmember at Large and Minority Leader Mark Williamson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing to pass.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman at Large Samantha Clausmo Testa.
Thank you. I just want to say that I am challenging the council. I will be doing the treadmill challenge for the Heart Run and Walk this Friday from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. So if you want to call in and donate, I will send everybody my link. We're raising some funds for a great cause, and I'm glad to see that the Heart Run and Walk will be back in person this Saturday. And last but not least, I want to wish all our firefighters, the chief, happy International Firefighters Day. And I just saw your post from the Grand Rehabilitation Center. That was very nice. We got a giving community, and I just want to thank our firefighters and all the way up to the chief on a job well done every day protecting the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman at Large and President Pro Temp Frank DeBrango, you have the floor.
I voted, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Well said there, Councilperson Colosimo. Councilman Miola kind of stole my thunder. I want the residents to be patient. There's a lot of brush in the road, a lot of tree branches. We had that storm. I had a few trees in my yard come down as well. A couple of branches. And my parents, they actually live across the street from me, and we had to take down several branches of theirs. And I've been waiting 2 weeks, and every day they say, when are they coming? When are they coming? So be patient. It was quite the storm there with a heavy snow all at once and knocked a lot of trees down. And I'm sure the DPW is doing the best they can to get out and get these neighborhoods cleaned up. And like Councilman Miola said, try not to put it in the road, try to put it on the curb on your property. They'll scoop it off or they'll brush it off for you and pick it up for you. So if it is in the road, and sometimes the branches are built up so high you can't even see around the corner because some of them are close to the corner. A lot of piles are very, very high, and it's very difficult for drivers, so they have to pull out in the lane, and it's not a good thing. It'll be a safety factor. So that's all I have. I just wanted to reiterate, be patient, and I'm sure the DPW will be around the neighborhood soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You know what we used to do? We used to go in reverse sometimes, and then we'd go from 9 to 1, and then 1 to 9. Because all the people from 1 to 4 used to take all the people from 7 to 9. It's the Northwest, believe it or not.
All right. Proposed Ordinance Number One. We're going to move on to the legislation for this evening. That was reviewed in pre-meeting conference. This is sponsored by Councilman Miola. You're moving this, right? Sponsored by Councilman Miola. All right, we have a second from Councilperson Friend. Be it ordained, Section 2-16-378, Schedule W, handicap parking locations be amended to include the following: Belmont Avenue, handicap parking for one vehicle. Location specifically is 1010 Belmont Ave. To be it further ordained, proper signage will be erected as necessary. Your votes.
9 A's adopted.
Does someone want to move proposed ordinance number 2? Councilman Beatrice, you sponsored this. I just want to make sure that someone moves it from the floor actively since there was discussion here.
I'll pull it from the table, right? Is that
Yeah.
what you guys should do?
Yeah.
Just pull it, Mr. President.
I'll second his motion.
There's no sponsor for it, so.
Okay.
Oh, we're just pulling it?
Yeah.
Dispensed.
Yep.
Anyone opposed to that?
Nope.
Okay. Come back to the drawing board 2 weeks. Sounds good. All right, proposed ordinance number 3. We need a motion for this one. It's sponsored by 2 people. An ordinance adding casinos to the temporary moratorium ordinance adopted on April 20th, 2022.
Mr. President, I'd like to refer this to committee.
Okay. All right, we have a second from Williamson. Any opposed to putting this in committee? It's in committee. Proposed resolution number 4 is a marriage officer resolution for Tim Julian for a 2-year period, May 4th, 2022 to December 31st, 2023. It's sponsored by Friend. Is there a second? Miola is the second on that. Your votes.
9 A's adopted.
Okay, proposed resolution number 5 is an authorization for sale of wine and beer to Utica Center for Development. Miola is the motion. Burmaster's the second. Whereas the sale of alcoholic beverages and possession of an open container containing alcoholic beverages is prohibited on Utica city streets, sidewalks, playgrounds, parks, and right-of-way by ordinance of the common council, except in certain instances where permission is granted by the council, be it resolved that the permission to sell beer and wine, etc., for St. Mary Mount Carmel Blessed Sacrament Parish, for the Mount Carmel Blessed Sacrament Festival, dated July 15th from 5 to 10 p.m., July 16th from 5 to 10 p.m., and July 17th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 648 J Street, is allowed to have beer and wine. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Is there a motion to move proposed resolution number 6? Miola, authorizing sale of beer and wine to FX Matt Brewery Company. Name of the sponsor is FX Matt Brewing. Name of the event is United Way 100th Anniversary Celebration. Date is June 10th, 2022, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at 811 Edward Street in the brewery courtyard. Your votes. Second. Thank you. I think they got it.
Yeah.
When is the 100th anniversary? Does it say, or is it just when the celebration is?
The anniversary? I don't recall offhand, but I know that this is when the celebration is.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we did the proclamation 2 months ago for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. I knew we did something.
But I can't remember exactly when the 100th anniversary is. Your votes. Yes, thank you.
9 yeas adopted.
All right, proposed resolution number 7 is another wine and beer authorization.
Make a
We have
motion.
We have a motion from Williamson for the Utica Zoo. Second from Councilperson Friend for the Utica Zoo. Wine in the Wilderness, Saturday, June 4th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. 1 Utica Zoo Way. Your votes. Councilperson Friend. There we go.
9 yeas adopted.
Okay, we have proposed ordinance number 8, sponsored by Councilmember Beatrice. Do we have a second? We have a second from Aiello. Be it ordained that section 216-360, Schedule E, no parking at all times, be amended to include the following: east side of Coventry Ave from Herkimer Road to the front of 446 Coventry Ave, west side of Coventry Ave from the Trent Road turnoff to Service Place, to include the island across from 436 Coventry Ave. Be it further ordained, proper signage will be erected where necessary. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Proposed ordinance number 9. Much discussion revolving around this one.
Motion to rescind, Mr. President.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Intersections where stops required, be it ordained. Section 216-358, Schedule C, intersections where stops required. Beckwith Place southwest corner of Beckwith Place and James Street be rescinded. Your votes.
9 yeas rescinded.
All right. Proposed ordinance number 10, sponsored by Councilman Mule.
Motion to waive the Thursday rule, Mr. President.
All right, is there a second?
I just think that Councilman DeBrango should also be a sponsor.
We're both Franks. We're both Franks.
All right, so does someone want a second the Thursday rule
I'll
waiving?
second it.
Okay. All right, any opposed to that? All right. All right.
We're going
Any
to waive the
second?
Thursday rule for the rest of the legislation, council
Yes.
members? Okay.
All right. Any opposed to that? Perfect. Be it ordained, section 216-358, Schedule C, Beckwith Place, northwest corner of Beckwith Place and James Street, be it ordained, the proper signage will be erected where necessary. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Proposed resolution number 11 is setting the dates and times for the July and August Common Council meeting. Is there a motion? All right, so Mule is moving this one. Councilperson Friend is the second. Be it resolved that the Common Council does hereby schedule its regular July Common Council meeting for Wednesday, July 6th, 2022 at 7 p.m. and its August Common Council meeting for Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Common Council chambers. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
All right, is there anything in committee?
Yeah,
that you'd
I'd like to,
discuss?
I would like to make a motion to discharge proposed resolution number 1 dated 4/6/2022.
In committee of the whole.
4-6, that's the Board of Assessment
Yes,
Review?
I'd like to rescind that, please,
Second, Mr. President.
or discharge it, or whatever.
Any
you want.
opposed to discharging that legislation? All right, it's gone. Anything else?
That is all.
Well, you guys have the floor.
Motion to close.
Okay, thank you. All right, great meeting. Have an awesome time.
Still not the fastest meeting.